Did you know that the very first person to put a tire on a wheel was a bloke called John Dunlop? He was a Scottish engineer who was tinkering around in his shed in the 1880s, and he invented the pneumatic tire, or the tyre for short. At the time, people were using solid tires made out of things like wood or metal, but Dunlop had the genius idea of putting air inside a tire to make it softer and more comfortable to ride on. And this invention changed the world forever. His tires were an immediate hit, and soon after, every mode of transport that you can think of started using tires. Dunlop's original tires were made out of canvas and rubber, and they were inflated with air using a hand pump. Can you imagine having to pump up your tires with a hand pump every time you wanted to go for a ride? Not only that, but the early tires were very dangerous because they would often burst, and this could cause serious accidents. It wasn't until the 1900s that someone came along and had the idea of putting a layer of protection between the inner tube and the outer tire. This made the tires much safer and more reliable, which is why you never see inner tubes on bicycles these days unless you're riding one of those crappy Walmart bikes. But wait, there's more. It turns out that the very first tires were actually solid tires made out of wood. Can you imagine riding on wooden wheels? They were hard, uncomfortable, and dangerous. But they did the job back in the 1800s when people were first starting to use bicycles. In fact, the first recorded use of a tire was in 1617, when a German inventor created a wheel with a tire made out of a hollow tube filled with sawdust. This made the ride much smoother and more comfortable, but it also made the wheel heavier and more expensive. It wasn't until 1845 that someone came along and had the idea of putting an inflatable rubber tube inside a wheel. This made the ride even smoother and more comfortable, and it also made the wheel lighter and cheaper. But it wasn't until 1888 that someone had the idea of putting a layer of protection between the inner tube and the outer tire. This made the tires much safer and more reliable. And that's why today we have tires on everything from bicycles to cars to airplanes. If you're wondering why we don't have tires on trains, it's because they run on steel wheels, which are much stronger and more durable. Plus, the steel wheels provide better traction on the tracks.